May I have the pleasure of inviting my esteemed panelists. Uh, do I have Dr. Wasim Abbas here?
I am here.
Right, Wasim. Dr. Denny?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Vikas Goswami?
Yes, sir, I am there.
Dr. R.K. Chaudhary?
Yes, sir, I am there.
Dr. Divesh Goyal?
Yes, sir, I am there.
Dr. Vineet Govind Gupta?
Yes, sir, I am there.
Dr. Saurabh Mishra?
Yes, sir, I am there.
Dr. Safalta?
Yes, I am there.
Dr. Mohit Agarwal?
Yes, sir, good evening, I am here.
Dr. Chaturbuj?
Yes, sir, good evening. I am also here.
So lovely. We have all the panelists. I think we have broken a record. First panel session, all the panelists are there. So welcome
Exactly.
all. Welcome all to this interesting case of bone health, which has been nicely alluded to in the last two lectures. So we'll be just reiterating whatever has been discussed, and of course we can have deliberations where you feel that it is more pertinent or prudent to go into depth. So we'll start with one case. This is a 71-year-old male, hypertension, which is controlled. He had a history of backache off and on for 6 months, and extreme worsening of the lower backache for the last 3 days, and was able to walk with support. So he consulted an orthopedician who did an MRI spine along with routine investigations and PSA. And the spine showed that there was a subtle collapse at L1 to L3, and there was a collapse in compression at T5, T6, T10, and nerve root compression at C6. CT chest and abdomen showed mediastinal and abdominal lymphadenopathy and an enlarged prostate. Serum PSA was 2857 nanograms per mils, and creatinine was 1.9. It was a recent increase. He had done it prior, about 3 to 4 months back, and calcium was 9.2. And one thing I didn't write, uric acid was about 7.8. So this was a history of a 71-year-old gentleman who's a hypertensive, and he developed a recent backache for the last 6 months. And a biopsy was done that showed Gleason score 4+4, and PNI was present, angio invasion was not seen. So may I ask Dr. Wasim, what would you do further?
Yeah, I think we have to work up him further. We have to see the extension of disease. And I think I will do further PSMA PET will be, I think, an ideal here. I think what I will do probably.
So you have choices of PSMA PET, MRI whole body, bone scan whole body. So which one would you prefer?
I usually prefer PSMA PET.
Suppose we had not done the MRI earlier. Would you add MRI to it, or would you do MRI whole body?
Definitely, I will do MRI back because he is symptomatic. He is having backache. And I think MRI will be a tool which will pick up any compression on a nerve.
Yeah, for any architectural deficit,
for any architecture,
MRI would be very, very much essential, because PET won't be able to capture those details. So this was his PET CT that showed abdominal and left inguinal and cervical lymph nodes. And he had lytic sclerotic lesions almost in the entire skeletal system. You can see the spine is practically riddled, and some areas you can see collapse, and there is a mild indentation here. So my question to Dr. Denny: the patient was started on Pharmagon and managed for renal failure and UTI. Would you use bone modifying agents in this situation? Dr. Denny. Is Denny there?
Yeah, now I'm muted.
Yeah.
So as the patient is already at the treatment naive, he is at multiple bone metastasis with compressive, impending compression at least. So I would like to add the bone modifying agent upfront only, along with Pharmagon. Beyond doubt, yes, definitely.
So do you think Pharmagon worsens the situation in these patients, or it has no impact on the bone health? Our basic thrust would be, on the bone metabolism and the bone skeletal related events, because the whole meeting is geared on that. We won't be going into the nitty-gritties of prostate treatment. Suffice to say that he would be managed for renal failure, UTI, and the bone compression. So, in CSPC, when you give, say, Pharmagon, does it have any impact on the risk of skeletal related events?
I think it is the other way around. We usually have a reflexly more event with the GnRH analog rather than with this Pharmagon.
Okay.
So if we have some doubt or we are in the risk of impending compression features, so it is in fact better to use this Pharmagon one rather than Zoladex.
See, broadly speaking, when you use ADTs, there is about 20 to 45% risk of fracture in these patients. So, Dr. Vikas, when you see these patients of CSPC with these multiple bony abnormalities, would you like to use these agents, that is the bisphosphonates or the Rankel, as treatment?
So, sir, in this case, the patient is symptomatic and he has a fracture, I think, or collapse also. So, I would.
So, you would use more because of the osteopenia and the prolapse, but you won't use it as a treatment for the metastasis, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And he also has pain. So just to make him symptomatically better also, maybe I'll add one of these agents.
So how much zoledronic acid do you give for osteoporosis or osteopenia in these kind of patients, and how much this denosumab?
In this case, so one of the, so if you're asking for the dose, denosumab, we have that 60 milligram dose.
Yeah, correct.
For zoledronic acid, we are using usually once in 4 months. And but it is guided by the creatinine levels, which in this case are deranged. I think it's 1.9.
Dr. Wasim, you have any difference of opinion in the usage of zoledronic acid as osteopenic agent? Is it used once in 4 months or something else?
I think
I think you have to unmute yourself.
I think 6 monthly is the dosage for osteoporosis, for osteopenia.
There was an article in NEJM which told that this was a very warped up dose. This is 5 milligram once a year for osteoporosis. So generally, when you give these in CSPC, it is 5 milligrams yearly for zoledronic acid and 60 milligram twice a year.
60 milligram.
If you have to use any other agent, because you can use for this osteopenia.
So apart from
oral bisphosphonates, you can use.
So we have been using those osteophos once a week, once a month dosing.
Yeah.
So I slightly differ in the article which you were mentioning for osteopenias. Were they also taking into account those patients who were on these kind of agents, or were they generally just simply?
See, I myself was surprised. I just went to check, and for zoledronic acid or for bisphosphonates, when you use zoledronic acid was used in 5 milligrams. I really don't know from where they came up with this magic figure of 5. But I couldn't find it in the discussion per se. So that is what they say. That is what the data says.
no, sir. Practically, we are using every 6 monthly, right, for osteopenia.
For osteopenia, see, the data says it is once a year. If you use denosumab, then you are giving it twice a year.
6 monthly.
Yeah. So at 10 months, this patient had no radiological progression, UTI was settled, the KFTs were settled. And 12 months, again, he started becoming symptomatic for new onset pains. And PSA started rising again, and it went to 204. And a PET was done, PSMA PET was done, which showed a few lesions which were increasing in extent and avidity. And this was the follow-up PET CT. So you have again a progression at this point of time. So will you add a bone modifying agent if not previously added, or will you change the bone modifying agent if you have added previously? Yes or no? Dr. Chaudhary, would you comment on this?
Definitely will add if it was not added in the beginning, but I would like to start at the beginning only, as the other panel said. And switching over from one agent to other agent has not actually studied or shown to benefit. But it was, if it was the zoledronic acid, I would incline to change to denosumab.
Okay. Would you wait for the patient to become symptomatic, or would you start in asymptomatic patients also?
It is symptomatic patient, isn't it?
Yeah, this is symptomatic. Suppose the patient is asymptomatic and has
No,
a
I
rising
won't change, sir. I won't change.
Still, you would continue to give bisphosphonates or Rankel?
Yeah, I'll continue.
Yeah, so that's what, in the last lecture, Dr. Jyoti had also said that whether the patient is symptomatic or asymptomatic, then even then you should give these agents because they help. And if you want to add a bone modifying agent, which one would you add? Let us say we talk of bisphosphonates further and zoledronic and pamidronate. Dr. Divesh Goel, which one would you prefer amongst these two?
Again, sir, my preference I have no experience of pamidronate and oral bisphosphonate. My experience is with two zoledronic acid and denosumab. But if cost is not an issue and older age patients and creatinine clearance is
I think you restrict yourself to bisphosphonates. Among these two, you would give zoledronate?
I think if cost is not concerned, then I will the first prefer denosumab compared to zoledronic.
Suppose the patient is not affordable for denosumab and the patient is in renal failure, then what would you do?
Sir, again, I will calculate the creatinine clearance. If creatinine clearance is between 45 to 60, then I will modify the dose of zoledronic acid to 3.3 to 3.5.
Let us say the creatinine is 3. This patient had 1.9 and let us say it progresses to 3. I am giving you a hypothetical situation.
No, sir. I will not use the zoledronic acid.
Then what would you do?
Sir, only option of denosumab.
Okay. Dr. Vineet Gupta, what would you do in this situation when the patient is non-affording and the creatinine is somewhere around 3?
Sir, I would not use zoledronic acid. My preference, now we have got generic denosumab also. Okay. My preference is to give it with a reduced frequency. Okay. If the patient has financial issues, that's better.
There are certain studies which have shown that if you give pamidronate as a prolonged infusion, even when the KFTs are deranged, of course the cutoff is about 3.5. At a lower dose, say about 60 milligrams, you can still give it, but then, they are not substantiated in many studies. And we used to give it earlier. Yeah.
So up to EGFR of 30, I do give zoledronic acid.
Right.
So if the EGFR is up to 2 mg dose, I go for these.
The data says that zoledronic acid you can give up till a creat of 2.5 to 3, although all of us agree that we don't give that beyond 2. And that also we give it with great caution. And do you guys check the KFTs and the calcium prior to giving zoledronate, or
yes, sir.
As a standard practice?
Yes, sir.
Or anybody differs?
No. I agree. It is still a practice we do every time.
Yeah, it's a good practice. So, Dr. Vineet, what about denosumab? Can you tell me the positive points and the negative points where you would contradict giving denosumab? We all know that where we can give, but where we should not give. Any 1 or 2 points which you can highlight?
So I guess there is hypocalcemia more with denosumab.
Yes.
As compared to zoledronic acid.
Yes.
So I think that might be one negative and the cost factor. Sir. Other than that, I think this should
in
be
the trial which Dr. Jyoti mentioned, the incidence of hypocalcemia in denosumab vis-a-vis zoledronic acid was more. So probably you have to be a bit careful. What about oral bisphosphonates, Dr. Saurabh?
Yes,
what is your opinion on oral bisphosphonates?
So, sir, there is no such strong data regarding the use of oral bisphosphonates in CRPCs. But if anyhow, if the patient is not able to take or cost constraint or he can't take IV, so oral bisphosphonates can be an option. Like Evandronate, I can use it, sir.
Yeah,
at least.
you're absolutely right. So I think we have a broad consensus. If the patient is not affording, then we go for bisphosphonates. If the patient has renal failure, then definitely denosumab is the drug of choice. And of course, the renal health, the efficacy and the convenience, because it's a subcutaneous administration, it is much better than giving IV preparation every time. So Dr. Safalta, what do you have in mind prior to therapy? Amongst all these, how will you make it as 1, 2, 3, and 4? Or everything would be 1, 1, 1, 1, or 2, 2, 2, or 3?
First thing, whenever a patient comes, they ask for symptom.
Can you be a bit louder, slightly?
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yeah, please.
First thing which patient wants is symptom control. So if the patient is in pain and the drug is giving higher overall survival, that will not help the patient. So patient wants symptom control and pain control first. So this will be my first priority. And followed by that, quality of life, life expectancy estimated, and PS. PS is performance status.
Yeah, performance status.
Yes, performance status is one thing when we decide what to give the drug, which drug to be given.
So does performance status in your case decide whether you have to give bisphosphonates or whether you have to give Rankel?
No, in this it hardly matters.
So I think that is the general idea when you treat these patients. Whenever a patient comes, symptoms and pain control is paramount. Then of course all these can follow, and if you have a symptom and pain control, then naturally you have an improvement in quality of life and the PS and everything. So Dr. Mohit, when you go to the investigation which are to be done prior to these bone modifying agents, could you just highlight what all would you like to do? We had just a brief discussion prior, whether it is denosumab or whether it is bisphosphonates.
So sir, as it has been illustrated in the slide, I would like to check all the 4 things. One would be obviously the dental status of the patient because of the increased risk of osteonecrosis of the jaw.
Let me ask you one question. You answer very frankly, from your heart. How many times do you send a patient for a dental checkup before starting bisphonates?
So truthfully, I just I asked my history. Yeah.
No, for a dental checkup, not for
not for a dental checkup. Sure. To be truthful, not for a dental checkup, but I do ask whether the patient has any dental problems or dental caries.
That's
but I agree with you. I should send the patient for a dental checkup. But in the clinical practice, I don't know how much are we able to follow that.
Sir, I have a question to that. Osteonecrosis of the jaw and dental caries, how are they related?
Any dental manipulation were done, any major dental manipulation which is expected to be done after the dose of a zoledronic acid or denosumab can increase the chances of osteonecrosis of jaw. So your denture should be, the patient's denture should be in a suitable situation.
No, why I'm saying so is by just doing a physical examination and just asking, is he planning for any tooth removal? Isn't that enough? Why should we refer him all the way to a dentist? Was the point which I was asking was that.
I don't know how trained are we for a complete examination of the denture, and can we absolutely assess the dental health by the even for that matter, when you send to the dental surgeon, how adept is the dental surgeon to see from the point of view of bisphosphonates or
You tell the dental surgeon that you want to give denosumab, he'll look here and there first, and then, Google somewhere and then come back enlightened. So that is always there. So how much calcium should you give on a daily basis? How much vitamin D should you give on a daily basis? Is it necessary, or you can just get away with it?
So, calcium and vitamin D supplementation are must. Vitamin D levels I check prior to initiation of these agents, and I try to give a weekly dose of these 60,000 vitamin D substances to correction and start my bone modifying therapy. Regarding KFT, I'm more concerned when I'm using zoledronic acid. If the KFT is deranged, then I prefer to use a denosumab.
Right, you're absolutely right. Either you can give a weekly vitamin D, or probably you can give 1,000 a day. And same goes for calcium. You can give 1 gram to about 1,200 milligrams a day when you put these, for calcium, when you put these patients. And what about DEXA scan in this case? Do you do a DEXA scan, or you only reserve when the patient becomes symptomatic?
So, sir, if I'm treating the patient of a CRPC who has a bone mets. So in any case, I am going to give a bone modifying agent. So in that case scenario, I might not require a DEXA scan. However, in the situation, as Dr. Denny said, that when in CSPC, actually the data is not in favor of using a zoledronic acid or a denosumab. In that situation, our DEXA scan might help us to decide in terms of osteopenia or osteoporosis and to go ahead with these sort of therapies.
See, Mohit, if I were to tell you that men over 55 years of age, as a consensus, in one of the meta-analysis, it was seen that 50% of the people who are more than 55 years of age have osteopenia, whether you agree or not. If not 50%, then 40 to 50%. Even if you do your vitamin D analysis, I'm sure it would be either borderline or less, because we are not exposed to any sunlight.
It's pretty low, sir. It's pretty low.
See, so irrespective, and people who smoke, it is still further down. So these were the expected side effects which you are talking about: ONJ and hypocalcemia, decrease in vitamin D. What do you do if a skeletal related event, whether it is because of radiation or bone or surgery to bone or pathological fracture, spinal cord compression occurs on treatment with the PMAs? So Chatur, may I ask you this question? Would you like to continue the same? Would you like to change to a new one? Or would you like to stop it altogether? And I can have opinion from the others after Chatur finishes. So you have denosumab, you have bisphosphonates. So patient is on bisphosphonates, and the patient develops any one of these SREs. What would you do?
So I think I would be comfortable in changing to denosumab if patient is on bisphosphonates, rather than stopping BMA altogether. I would change to a new BMA. And,
but what would prompt you to change from one bisphosphonates to Rankel, or say, suppose if the patient was on denosumab, would you like to change to bisphosphonate?
No, on the contrary, if patient is on a denosumab, I would be a little bit skeptical to change to zoledronic acid. But if the patient is on a bisphosphonate, then I would be, I think, prompting, because the data is more stronger for denosumab. So if the patient is a SRE on bisphosphonate, I would be comfortable in changing to denosumab. But
see, what the data is, when you use denosumab and you use Rankel from inception, then if you compare, then the data says that yes, there is a difference. But there is no data to say that when you switch over from one to the other, then you get the applied benefit. Is there any data which you are aware of? At least I am not aware of any data.
Sir, if I may enter.
Yeah, Mohit, please.
So there is a data to suggest that if the patient is on zoledronic acid and the patient has developed an SRE, changing over to denosumab does help. There is small data regarding the same. But the reverse data is not there, that if the patient is on denosumab, then you can change over to another bone modifying agent. But there is small data showing a benefit for a change from zoledronic acid to denosumab.
Vikas, you have to add
And
anything?
on the contrary, if we discontinue denosumab, there is a risk of osteolysis also. So that we also is
Okay, fine. Vikas, you have to add anything?
Sir, like you said, honestly, practically, I do change from zoledronic acid to denosumab if there is a fracture on zoledronic acid. But then, do we have any convincing evidence to support either ways? I'm not very sure of.
So suppose, say, okay, Dr. Chaudhary, if you put the patient on denosumab and there is a progression, what will you do? Then you are in a fix?
I will continue the
Denosumab. So
There's
I
no
think
other
the consensus is that there is no study. Of course, Mohit was saying, Mohit, was that a phase 3 study or just a small?
No, sir. Also a small study which showed a benefit of changing, but no phase 3 data.
Okay, fine. So then coming to the duration of treatment with the BMAs, how long do you give it? Suppose if you give it for osteopenia or you give it for the osteosclerotic mets, Dr. Wasim, what is your opinion on this? The duration of treatment.
See, for metastatic disease, we have.
Let us split it into two parts. One is for the
Metastatic
osteopenia and for the metastatic.
For metastatic disease, usually the hypothesis is about like everybody for 2 years, and beyond that, the chances of osteonecrosis and other complications do increase. So 2 years, 20 months. And the osteopenia, I think we have to do the DEXA scan regularly and check what is the T-score. If T-score is very low, then we continue for next 2 years. If it is okay, T-score is like it's not osteoporosis, the patient is doing fine, then we stop at 2 years and follow with DEXA scan.
Dr. Devesh, what is your opinion on this? Do you differ or is the same?
No, I am same with Dr. Wasim. Again, in metastatic setting, up to 1 to 2 years, and in osteopenia, I usually give every 4 to 6 months. Every 6 months to 12 months.
Anybody has any difference in opinion?
Sir, if I can come in.
Yeah.
Sir, as per the latest American Society data, we can continue these agents as long as possible. The initial recommendation for 2 years. Now they are not saying regarding the same. They are saying that you can continue as long as possible until and unless patient develops some complication or some issue regarding continuation.
Does everybody agree to this?
Yes, sir. Recent guidelines have said,
Yeah, Denny.
So recent guideline have said it should be continued indefinitely.
Till patient
Previously, we were using up to 2 years just based on some trial, but 2 year cutoff was not there anywhere. And in fact, my practice, I am using for 2 years practically, and after that, once in 3 months, I am changing to that.
All of us have been using it for 2 years, but now since there's 1 or 2 studies which I went through, they made it 3 years. Probably later on it might go till the acceptable toxicities are there, and after that it can be stopped. Now we have been using bisphosphonates, say on a 4 weekly basis, and we have switched over to 12 weeks also based on some trials which have been there. There is the Swiss reduced trial and the REACT BTA trial. Dr. Vineet Gupta, what is your opinion about this? Do you want to give 4 weekly or you want to give 12 weekly, and why?
Sir, I am giving 12 weekly only to almost all patients because it is just more convenient for the patient, and there is no reason to say 4 weeks remain better than 12 weeks. Patients who are getting active chemotherapy, for them we might increase the frequency. For example, somebody is anyway coming every 3 weeks for chemotherapy, then I might give it 6 weekly to these patients. But all the patients who are not on active therapy, I have kept them on 12 weekly.
Are you aware of any of these trials, the reduced trial or the REACT BTA trial?
So I have not gone into a lot of detail, but as far as I understand is that in both these studies, 12 weekly protocol was not inferior to the 4 weekly protocol.
Yeah, you're right. So
it is much more convenient for the patient.
Convenience definitely is there for us also and for the patient also. Denny, what do you use?
As I said earlier also, for practically we are using for 2 years every monthly, every 4 weekly, and after that only reducing to 3 monthly interval.
So now I think there is a consensus amongst us that if we want, we can give it 12 weekly only. Because of,
reduced trial,
I would like
4 doses of 4 weekly and bisphosphonates denosumab was given, and then it was 12 weekly.
Yes.
But it has shown, it has reduced the side effects, but then 4 weekly was better. So it's better to give 4 weekly for 2 years or 3 years.
No, but that REACT BTA trial was there where they compared 4 with 12 and they found that there was non-inferiority in terms of most of the issues. And of course, the final results of the reduced trial, they have to come. That was an interim analysis which they had done.
Sir, I would like to add, sir.
That involves zoledronic acid.
Yes.
Or denosumab.
For denosumab, we can't use.
This was for zoledronic acid.
That was for zoledronic only.
All these are for zoledronic acid.
Yeah.
For denosumab, we are giving it on 4 weekly basis.
Yeah. That's the point.
So this is my last slide. There are other supportive care therapies which, since this session was focused on bisphosphonates and Rankel, the other modalities also have to be brought into the treatment paradigm. You have to do surgery sometimes. Sometimes you have to do cementoplasties. Sometimes you have to take out the bone. Radiation, of course, wherever it is required. Analgesics, NSAIDs, opioids, steroids, nerve block, and also radium and samarium wherever they are required in these patients. So I think in the interest of time, because we have crossed the time, I will stop here, and I thank my esteemed panelists for such a lively discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.